Dawn broke serenely over Pine Ridge, Colorado, revealing the majestic outline of the Elk Mountain Range. Dew still covered the leaves when Amber opened her bedroom window. She breathed deeply, taking in the aroma of herbs her grandmother cultivated in the backyard. At 15, the dark-haired, honey-eyed girl knew every corner of that garden, every plant and its properties. Shadow, her faithful black German shepherd, waited patiently at the foot of her bed. His golden eyes seemed to contain wisdom beyond human understanding. Since rescuing him as a puppy 3 years ago, they had developed an inexplicable connection. "Good morning, buddy," Amber whispered, stroking his ears. "Let's see what Grandma is preparing today." In the narrow hallway of the simple adobe house, the scent of lemon balm and freshly brewed coffee guided Amber to the kitchen. Grandma Rose, a 70-year-old woman with gray hair always braided, stirred an infusion on the wood stove. "Did you sleep well, my dear?" asked her grandmother without looking away from her preparation. "Today the sky is clear, but I feel moisture in the air. It's a good day to harvest roots." Amber smiled. Grandma Rose was known in the region for her ability to predict weather changes, and for her teas that cured everything from common colds to deeper afflictions of the soul. Some called her a healer, others a witch. To Amber, she was simply Grandma, the woman who had raised her since her parents, Elaine and Edward, had departed this world when she was just a baby. "I'll water the plants before the sun gets too strong," announced the girl after finishing her coffee. Shadow followed her to the backyard. The old mango tree, which according to Grandma Rose was over 200 years old, extended its twisted branches like protective arms over the medicinal herb garden. While watering the rosemary seedlings, Amber noticed something strange. The soil near the exposed roots of the mango tree appeared disturbed. "What do you think happened here, Shadow?" she asked, more to herself than to the dog. Shadow approached, sniffing the spot with unusual interest. His golden eyes seemed brighter when fixed on that point. Intrigued, Amber began to push away the soil with her hands. That's when her fingers touched something cold and metallic. Carefully, she unearthed a solid silver medallion with an ancient, worn appearance. It was circular, the size of her palm, and had inscriptions and symbols that seemed to change shape as sunlight fell upon them. In the center was the image of a dog with flaming eyes, strangely similar to Shadow. Upon holding the medallion, Amber felt an unexpected warmth course through her body, as if a gentle electric current ran through her veins. Shadow emitted a light growl, his ears raised in alert. "It's just an old object, friend," she tried to calm him, but even she perceived there was something different about that piece. Determined to show her discovery to her grandmother, Amber walked back to the house. She found Grandma Rose separating dried herbs on the kitchen table. "Grandma, look what I found buried near the mango tree." As soon as Grandma Rose's gaze fell upon the medallion, time seemed to freeze. The serene expression of the elderly woman transformed into pure terror. The glass jar she was holding escaped from her hands, shattering on the floor. Her usually calm eyes widened, fixed on the object. Where did you find this?" Her grandmother's voice came out trembling, almost unrecognizable. "It was buried near the roots of the mango tree. What is it, Grandma? What happened?" Grandma Rose advanced with surprising speed for her age, snatching the medallion from her granddaughter's hands. "This should not have appeared now." "Not yet," she muttered, more to herself than to Amber. "Hide it. Hide it immediately and don't tell anyone about it." "But Grandma, what is this? Why are you so frightened?" The old woman breathed deeply, trying to compose herself. Her eyes darted to the window, as if looking for something or someone outside. "There are secrets in this land that should not be awakened, my child. Some stories only make sense when told at the right time, and that time has not yet come." Before Amber could insist, they heard knocking at the door. It was Jack, one of the oldest residents of the region, coming to get a remedy for his joint pain. Grandma Rose quickly stored the medallion in a small carved wooden box and went to the door, leaving Amber with more questions than answers. In the days following the discovery of the medallion, Amber noticed subtle changes around her. Starting with Shadow. The dog, normally docile and playful, displayed increasingly vigilant behavior, He spent hours staring at the edge of the forest that surrounded the property, ears constantly alert, as if he could hear sounds imperceptible to humans. During the nights, Amber was awakened by the animals' prolonged howls. These weren't common howls of communication with other dogs, but something primitive, almost ritualistic. On the third consecutive dawn, when she got up to calm him, Amber found only emptiness. Shadow had disappeared. "Shadow," she called in a low voice, so as not to wake her grandmother, while searching the backyard with a flashlight. The night was abnormally silent. Not even the crickets and frogs, so common at that time of year, emitted their usual sounds. The full moon bathed the landscape, with a bluish clarity that made the shadows denser. Amber felt a shiver when her eyes rested on the old mango tree, whose twisted branches cast shadows that seemed to move of their own volition. Determined not to return home without her friend, she crossed the small wooden fence and headed toward the forest. She had grown up exploring those trails, but never at night and never alone. She called for Shadow several times, but only the echo of her own voice answered her. When she was about to give up, she heard leaves rustling to her right. She directed the beam of the flashlight, expecting to find her faithful companion. Instead, she saw only a pair of eyes reflecting the light, golden eyes that blinked once before disappearing into the darkness. "Shadow, is that you?" "Come here, boy." A new noise caught her attention, this time from behind. Turning around, Amber felt her heart race. A few meters from her, a mountain lion was watching her with curiosity. The feline, however, showed no aggression. On the contrary, it seemed almost reverent. After a few seconds that seemed eternal, the animal moved away in slow steps, as if inviting her to follow it. Amber, paralyzed between fear and fascination, remained motionless until the mountain lion disappeared among the trees. It was only then that she realized she had been holding her breath. Something strange was happening in that forest, something related to the medallion. She could feel it. When she returned home, the sky was already beginning to lighten. To her surprise, she found Shadow lying on the porch, as if he had never left. His fur was dirty with soil and dry leaves, and his eyes had a different glow, almost supernatural. "Where have you been?" she asked, kneeling to hug him. "You had me worried." The dog licked her face, but there was a strange solemnity in his behavior, as if he had returned from an important mission. At breakfast, Amber noticed that Grandma Rose was watching her with redoubled attention. The old woman seemed more tired than usual, with deep circles under her eyes. "You went out during the night, it wasn't a question." "Shadow disappeared. I went looking for him in the forest," Amber replied, unable to lie to her grandmother. "And what did you see there?" The direct way the question was asked made Amber hesitate. It was as if Grandma Rose already knew the answer. "A mountain lion. It didn't attack me, it just observed me and then left." Grandma Rose closed her eyes for a moment, as if confirming a suspicion. "Animals sense it first. It has always been like that." "Sense what, Grandma?" "The changes. The awakening." Before Amber could question further, they heard insistent knocking at the door. It was Benjamin, one of Grandma Rose's oldest friends. The 70-year-old man, normally so calm and good-humored, had a troubled countenance. His hands, calloused from work in the fields, visibly trembled. "Rose, we need to talk," he said urgently, casting a hesitant glance at Amber. "In private." "Amber is almost a woman now, Benjamin, and whatever is happening, it concerns her too." The old man sighed, resigned, and accepted the cup of coffee that Grandma Rose offered him. "I had dreams, Rose, dreams of Elaine and Edward." Amber felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. She rarely heard mentions of her parents, Grandma. Rose avoided the subject, saying only that they had suffered an accident when she was a baby. "What kind of dreams?" asked her grandmother, her voice betraying an anxiety she was trying to hide. "So real I could smell the forest, the moisture of the waterfall. Elaine was there, performing the ritual, and Edward—" Benjamin interrupted himself, looking at Amber with compassion. "They were trying to tell me something, to warn me, and they weren't the only ones. The trees whispered, the rivers murmured. Something ancient is awakening, Rose. Something that will endanger not only you, but the entire natural balance of the region. The medallion has been found, confirmed. Grandma rose to Amber's astonishment. Amber unearthed it near the mango tree. Benjamin turned even paler. Then it has begun. Earlier than we expected. What are you talking about? Interrupted Amber, unable to contain herself any longer. What medallion is this? What does it have to do with my parents? The two elderly people exchanged glances, as if silently deciding how much they would reveal. Your mother was special, Amber, began Benjamin, choosing his words carefully. She belonged to an ancient lineage, as does your grandmother, a lineage entrusted with protecting certain secrets of this land. The rest of the day passed in an atmosphere of tension. After Benjamin left, Grandma Rose avoided Amber's questions, limiting herself to saying that she needed to meditate on what to do next. The girl watched, frustrated, as her grandmother locked herself in the back room, the one that always remained locked and which, according to Grandma Rose, kept memories of the past. In the afternoon, Amber decided to go into town. Perhaps there she could get information about the medallion, or at least distract herself from the doubts that now swarmed in her mind. Shadow accompanied her, more alert than ever, his golden eyes scanning every movement around them. Pine Ridge wasn't a large town, but it attracted tourists interested in the natural beauties of the Elk Mountain Range and the mystical legends that surrounded the region. As she walked through the central square, Amber noticed curious glances in her direction. People who had always greeted her with smiles now observed her with a mixture of fear and fascination. At Mr. Oliver's grocery store, where she went to buy some supplies for her grandmother, silence fell as soon as she entered. Conversations resumed in whispers, and she could feel the glances on her back. "What's happening, Mr. Oliver?" she asked, unable to contain herself. The man, who had known her since she was small, hesitated before answering. "People are uneasy, girl. Nature has been acting strange. The river has receded, even with the recent rains. Trees that were flowering a week ago are now dry. And the animals, well, it's not normal to see a mountain lion as close to houses as the one that was spotted. Last night." Amber felt a chill as she remembered the feline she had encountered in the forest. "Has this happened before?" she inquired, intuiting that there was more to that story. Mr. Oliver cast a nervous glance at the other customers in the grocery store who pretended not to be paying attention but were clearly catching every word. "Ask your grandmother about the year your parents passed away, girl. Ask about what happened before that." Before she could insist, Shadow began to growl low, focused on the grocery store door. A tall man with graying hair and a stubble beard had just entered. He wore dark clothes and a hat that partially shadowed his face. There was something intimidating about his presence, as if he carried an aura of contained power. The stranger's eyes, of an almost transparent blue, met Amber's. For an instant, she felt as if he could see through her, read her thoughts, search through her memories. Shadow advanced slightly, the growl increasing in intensity. "Quiet, boy," murmured Amber, placing her hand on the dog's head. More to comfort herself than to calm him. The man smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and approached the counter. "I came to find out if my order arrived, Oliver," he said, with a surprisingly melodious voice for someone of such an austere appearance. "Not yet, Mr. Elias, perhaps tomorrow or the day after." Elias. The name echoed in Amber's mind like a warning. Without knowing why, she felt that she should memorize it, that it was important. "Pretty girl, that one," commented Elias, still looking at Amber. "Reminds me of someone I knew a long time ago, a woman of great potential." "She's Rose's granddaughter," informed Mr. Oliver nervously. "Amber." "Amber," repeated Elias, as if savoring the sound. "Appropriate for someone with your lineage." The way he said the last word made Amber shudder. Shadow, perceiving her discomfort, placed himself between her and the stranger, his posture clearly defensive. "Intelligent dog," observed Elias, without being intimidated. The ancestors have always been wise in the choice of their guardians. Without waiting for a response, he made a brief gesture of farewell and left, leaving behind a heavy silence. "Who is he?" asked Amber, her voice trembling. "An outsider. He arrived a few weeks ago claiming to be a researcher. He's interested in local legends, mainly those involving the Veil Cave." Mr. Oliver lowered his voice. "Your grandmother doesn't like him. The last time he was here, she chased him from the backyard with a broom, shouting words I had never heard before." With her heart racing, Amber collected her purchases and hurriedly left the grocery store, anxious to get home and confront her grandmother. She needed answers now more than ever. The way back seemed longer. The sun was beginning to set behind the mountains, tinting the sky with orange and purple hues. The beauty of the scene contrasted with the uneasiness she felt. Shadow walked a bit ahead, occasionally stopping to sniff the air or look back as if checking if they were being followed. When they finally spotted the house, something seemed wrong. The lights were off even though it was already getting dark, and there was no smoke coming from the chimney, as was usual at that time when Grandma Rose prepared dinner. "Grandma," called Amber as she opened the front door. No response. The house was plunged into silence. She turned on the lights in the living room and kitchen, calling again for her grandmother. It was then that she noticed the door to the back room ajar. That room was never unlocked. She approached cautiously, gently pushing the door. The room was in disarray, as if someone had urgently searched for something. Old books scattered on the floor, open drawers, a small wooden chest turned upside down. "Grandma!" shouted Amber, fear growing in her chest. A noise coming from the back porch caught her attention. Shadow was already there, barking furiously. Amber ran, following the sound, and found Grandma Rose lying on the floor, breathing with difficulty. "Grandma!" "What happened? Who did this?" The old woman gripped her granddaughter's arm with surprising strength. "They came for the medallion. They know it was found," she whispered, her voice broken by the effort. "We can't stay here tonight. It's not safe." With Amber's help, Grandma Rose managed to stand up and enter the house. Her face was pale, but there were no visible injuries. In the kitchen, while preparing an herbal tea to calm her grandmother, Amber demanded explanations. "Was it the man I saw in town? Elias, was he the one who did this?" Grandma Rose shuddered at hearing the name, confirming Amber's suspicions. "You saw him? Spoke with him?" The old woman's voice was laden with apprehension. "He was at the grocery store. He looked at me in a strange way, said I reminded him of someone with potential." Grandma Rose closed her eyes as if that confirmed her worst fears. "He recognized you." "Of course he would." "You are the image of your mother," murmured her grandmother, more to herself than to Amber. "We need to leave here tonight, go to a safe place." "I'm not going anywhere without knowing the truth, Grandma." Amber crossed her arms, determined. "Who is this man? What does he want? And what does it have to do with the medallion and my parents?" The old lady sighed deeply, as if finally surrendering to a weight she had carried for years. "I intended to tell you everything when you turned 16. A few more months and you would be ready, but events have accelerated." Grandma Rose took a sip of the tea, seeking strength. "Elias was a guardian of the forest, like your mother, your father, me, and others before us. An ancient lineage, entrusted with protecting the natural balance of this region and the portal between the visible and invisible worlds." Amber sat down, astonished. Her grandmother's words seemed to come from a fantasy book, but something within her resonated with that truth, as if part of her being already knew. "The medallion you found," continued Grandma Rose, "is one of the sacred artifacts passed from generation to generation. It chooses its bearer when the time comes. Elias was also chosen once, but ambition corrupted him. He believed that the power contained in the Veil Cave, a sacred place hidden behind one of the waterfalls, could be used to control not only nature, but destiny itself." "And what does that have to do with how my parents died?" A heavy silence hung between them. Shadow, who until then had been observing from the kitchen door, approached and lay at Amber's feet, as if offering support for what was to come. "Your parents didn't die in an accident, my child," revealed Grandma Rose, her voice almost a whisper. They sacrificed themselves to prevent Elias from corrupting the sacred seal that maintains the balance. During the last spring equinox before you turned 1, Elias tried to open the portal permanently, which would have had devastating consequences. Your mother and father performed an ancient ritual, combining their powers to strengthen the seal and expel Elias. The price was their own lives. Tears streamed down Amber's face, years imagining a tragic accident, when in fact her parents had chosen sacrifice to protect something greater than themselves. Why did you never tell me this? To protect you. As long as you didn't know, as long as the medallion remained hidden, Elias would have no way to find you. But now that the medallion has resurfaced and you found it, everything has changed. He knows you are the next guardian and will do anything to prevent you from assuming this role before the next equinox. When will that be? In 3 weeks. It's the moment when the seal can be renewed or permanently broken. Amber's gaze shifted to Shadow, who watched her with his golden eyes, more alert than ever. And Shadow, what's his role in all this? A sad smile appeared on Grandma Rose's lips. You didn't find Shadow by chance on that rainy morning 3 years ago. He chose you, just like the medallion. Shadow is more than an ordinary dog. He's a protective manifestation of the forest spirits. As if understanding they were talking about him, Shadow stood up and approached Amber, touching his muzzle to her hand. The girl again felt that current of energy, similar to what she had experienced when she first touched the medallion. The conversation was interrupted by a shrill sound from outside. Shadow immediately went on alert, growling low and staring at the window. Grandma Rose rose with difficulty. "They've come," she whispered, fear evident in her voice. "Quick, get the medallion. It's in the carved box under my bed. Put it on. And don't take it off, no matter what happens." Amber ran to her grandmother's room while Grandma Rose turned off the lights in the house. She found the box easily, and upon opening it, saw the medallion glowing with its own light in the darkness. She hesitated for a second before placing it around her neck, immediately feeling the hot metal against her skin. When she returned to the living room, she found her grandmother on the front porch, Shadow by her side. Outside, 3 dark silhouettes approached the house. The full moon revealed their faces partially covered by hoods. "Hand over the medallion, old woman," ordered the tallest of them, advancing toward the porch. "And no one will get hurt." "The medallion has chosen its guardian," replied Grandma Rose, her voice surprisingly firm. "It cannot be taken by force." The man laughed, a cold, metallic sound. "Elias disagrees, and he has other methods of persuasion." With a quick gesture, the 3 invaded the porch. 2 of them grabbed Grandma Rose by the arms, forcing her to kneel. The leader advanced toward Amber, who backed up, leaning against the wall of the house. "So young," he commented, studying her, "and so misinformed. Do you know why your grandmother never told you the truth? Because she fears you'll make the right choice. The choice your parents refused to make." "Don't listen to him, Amber," shouted Grandma Rose, trying to break free. "The medallion must not fall into the wrong hands." The man turned to the old woman, anger distorting his features. "Silence. Old woman, you've interfered enough." He pushed Grandma Rose violently, making her fall. The scene filled Amber with a fury she had never felt before. The medallion on her chest began to pulse, emitting heat and a golden light that penetrated through the fabric of her blouse. It was at that moment that something unexpected happened. Shadow, until then silent, emitted a howl so deep and powerful that it seemed to make the earth tremble. His eyes, previously golden, now glowed like live embers. In a leap that seemed to defy the laws of physics, the dog launched himself at the aggressors. The first man was hit with such force that he flew, backward, falling from the porch. The other 2 backed away, fear stamped on their faces. One of them pulled out a knife, but before he could use it, he was hurled against the fence by an invisible force that seemed to emanate from Shadow. "What is this?" shouted one of them, as he tried to stand up. Shadow's presence seemed to have expanded, becoming something larger and more ancestral. The air around him vibrated with energy. The 3 men, now clearly terrified, retreated toward the road. "Elias was right," shouted the leader before fleeing. "She has awakened the protector, This changes everything. Dawn found Amber and Grandma Rose at Benjamin's house, where they had fled the previous night. The simple residence, located closer to the mountainside, offered a privileged view of the town and the surrounding forest. Shadow guarded the entrance, his behavior gradually returning to normal after the surprising episode of the previous night. "We need to act quickly," said Benjamin, while serving strong coffee at the kitchen table. "Elias won't give up easily, not now that he knows the medallion has awakened and chosen Amber." The girl looked at the artifact that now hung around her neck. Under the sunlight, the engraved symbols seemed to subtly change, as if they were alive. In the center, the image of the dog with flaming eyes seemed to stare at her, reminding her of Shadow's transformation the previous night. "What happened to him?" she asked, pointing to the dog lying at the doorstep. "He seemed different." Shadow is what we call a spirit guardian, explained Grandma Rose, her voice stronger after a night of rest. "In moments of great danger, especially for a bearer of the medallion, he can channel the ancestral energy of the forest." "Like a shaman," Amber tried to understand, connecting what she saw with the indigenous legends she had studied at school. "It's their way," agreed Benjamin. "The ancient peoples who inhabited this region believed that some animals were bridges between the visible and invisible worlds. It's no coincidence that the medallion has the image of a dog and that Shadow found you." Amber reflected on the day she had found Shadow 3 years ago. She was returning from school during a storm when she heard weak whimpers coming from a storm drain. There was the puppy, soaked and injured. From the first moment their eyes met, Amber felt an inexplicable connection. Now it all made sense. "If Elias discovered that you found the medallion and that Shadow awakened as a protector, he will accelerate his plans," Grandma Rose continued, concern evident in her voice. "We have only 3 weeks until the equinox, and you need to be prepared." "Prepared how?" Amber felt a knot in her stomach. "Until yesterday I was a normal teenager. How can I face someone who has decades of experience and who—" She hesitated, the reality of what had happened to her parents weighing on her chest. "Who didn't hesitate to cause my parents' departure." Benjamin exchanged a significant look with Grandma Rose, who nodded slightly. "You are not an ordinary teenager, Amber," said the old man gently. "You never were. The blood of the guardians runs in your veins. Your mother, Elaine, was one of the most powerful guardians I've ever known, capable of sensing the smallest changes in nature. And your father, Edward, came from a lineage of seers, people capable of seeing beyond the veil that separates the worlds." "And you think I inherited these abilities?" "We don't think, we're certain," replied Grandma Rose. "Plants have always grown faster when you care for them. Animals have always approached you without fear. And those dreams you've had since you were small, the ones that seem so real that you wake up smelling the forest and feeling the moisture of the waterfall." Amber's eyes widened in surprise. She had never told her grandmother about these recurring dreams, in which she saw herself walking in a dense forest until reaching a waterfall that hid the entrance to a cave bathed in a bluish light. "How do you know?" "Your mother had the same dreams. They are visions of the Veil Cave, the sacred place that the Guardians have protected for generations. That's where the portal is found, and that's where the seal needs to be renewed each spring equinox." Amber pressed her temples, trying to absorb so much new information. Her entire life had been built upon half-truths, incomplete stories, and now in less than 24 hours, her world was turned upside down. "And how do I prepare? Is there some Guardian of the Forest manual I should read?" Benjamin laughed, momentarily breaking the tension. "Not exactly a manual, but there are ancient texts that can help. And more importantly, there are practices, exercises that can awaken and strengthen your natural abilities." "We'll begin today," declared Grandma Rose, rising with an energy that surprised Amber. "There's no time to lose." The following days were of intense learning. Every morning before sunrise, Amber was awakened by Benjamin for meditations by a small stream that cut through his property. There, she learned to feel the flow of the water, to hear the whispers of the trees, to perceive the subtle variations of energy that permeated the place. In the afternoon, Grandma Rose instructed her about the properties of plants, Not just the medicinal ones she already knew, but those with specific powers, herbs that amplified perception, leaves that, when burned, created smoke capable of repelling, negative energies, roots that, transformed into powder, could temporarily seal openings between the worlds. On one of those afternoons, while Amber was learning to prepare a protective ointment based on forest herbs, Grandma Rose finally told her more about the day her parents departed. Elias had found an ancient text that spoke about the possibility of keeping the portal permanently open, explained the old woman, while grinding dried leaves in a wooden mortar. He believed that this would allow the energy of the Veil Cave to flow freely, giving him unlimited access to the power of the ancestors. And would that be so terrible? Balance exists for a reason, my child. The energy that flows from the Veil Cave is too powerful to be released without control. It would cause imbalances not only here but throughout the region. Droughts, floods, devastating storms. Nature would collapse. How did my parents stop him? Grandma Rose paused, her eyes lost in painful memories. They performed the ritual of convergence, something that had never been attempted before. They combined their powers, your mother's connection with nature and your father's vision beyond the veil, to strengthen the seal and expel Elias from the cave. But the ritual required more energy than their bodies could sustain. Tears streamed down the wrinkled face of her grandmother. Amber held her hands, feeling the shared pain of that loss. Did they know what would happen? Did they know they wouldn't return? Yes. Your mother had a vision the night before. She knew. It was the only way. Before leaving, she gave me the medallion and asked me to hide it until you were ready. And how do we know I'm ready now? The medallion chose this moment to reappear, and Shadow awakened as your protector. These are clear, signs that the time has come. At night, Amber trained with Shadow, strengthening her connection with the dog. Benjamin explained that the stronger this bond was, the more powerful the manifestation of the spirit guardian would be when necessary. On one of these nights, while they were practicing in the garden illuminated only by moonlight, Shadow suddenly raised his ears and fixed his gaze on the edge of the forest. His behavior changed instantly, not to the aggressive posture he had demonstrated on the night of the attack, but as if he recognized something or someone. "What is it, boy?" asked Amber, caressing his head. To her surprise, Shadow gently moved away and walked toward the woods. He stopped after a few meters and looked back as if inviting her to follow him. "I think he wants me to go with him," she said to Benjamin, who was watching from the porch. The old man nodded, an enigmatic smile on his lips. "Go, some teachings cannot come from us but from the forest itself." Under the silver mantle of the full moon, Amber followed Shadow into the forest. The path, which during the day would be familiar, took on mysterious contours under the nightlight. Shadows danced among the trees, and sounds that would normally go unnoticed became clear to her recently trained ears. The rustling of owl wings, the discreet movement of small rodents among the foliage, the constant murmur of water running in some nearby stream. Shadow advanced with determination, occasionally looking back to make sure that Amber was following him. His golden eyes reflected the moonlight, serving as guides in the penumbra of the woods. The medallion on Amber's chest pulsed gently, as if responding to some call imperceptible to common senses. After what seemed like an eternity, but was probably no more than half an hour, they reached a circular clearing perfectly symmetrical. Amber held her breath as she contemplated the place. A circle of ancient stones, half buried in the ground, formed a perfect perimeter. Each of the 12 stones was approximately the height of an adult man and displayed engraved symbols similar to those of the medallion. In the center of the circle, a 13th stone, smaller and flat like a table, radiated a tenuous bluish glow. "It's amazing," whispered Amber, marveled at the discovery. "How have I never heard of this place?" Shadow walked to the center of the circle and sat on the flat stone as if it were his natural throne. He looked at Amber, expectant. With hesitant steps, she crossed the threshold formed by the stones. Immediately, she felt a change in the atmosphere. The air seemed denser, charged with an energy that made her skin tingle. The sounds of the forest became distant, muffled, as if the circle existed in a dimension slightly displaced from reality. As she approached the center, the medallion on her chest began to shine more intensely, resonating with the light that emanated from the central stone. When she finally touched the smooth surface of the rock, a wave of energy ran through her body, and images flooded her mind. She saw unknown faces, but somehow knew they were her ancestors, guardians who came before her, performing rituals in that same circle of stones over the centuries. She saw her mother, young and radiant, holding hands with her father, both reciting words in an ancient language while the circle shone around them. The vision changed, and now she was observing the Veil Cave from inside, exactly as in her recurring dreams. A bluish light emanated from the walls themselves, and in the center of the main chamber, a vertical fissure pulsed with pure energy, the entrance to the other world, the portal that needed to be sealed at each equinox. Then she saw Elias, younger but unmistakable with his almost transparent blue eyes. He stood before the portal, reciting forbidden words, trying to force the permanent opening. The walls of the cave trembled and cracks began to form. The bluish light became red, threatening. The last image was the most painful, her parents holding hands again, but this time their faces showed determination mixed with sadness. They knew what was coming. They knew the price they would pay. Still they advanced, intoning the sacred chant that reverberated throughout the cave, expelling Elias and sealing the portal again at the cost of their own lives. When the visions ceased, Amber found herself kneeling on the central stone, tears streaming down her face. Shadow approached, touching his muzzle to her face, offering silent comfort. "Is this what you wanted to show me?" she asked in a low voice, caressing the dog's head. "What really happened to my parents?" In response, Shadow moved away and raised his muzzle to the sky, emitting a long, melodious howl. The sound reverberated through the stones of the circle, making them vibrate subtly. To Amber's amazement, the 12 external stones began to glow one by one, to the rhythm of Shadow's howl, until the entire perimeter was illuminated by a golden light. A strange sensation ran through Amber's body, as if something were emerging from within her. Instinctively, she raised her hands, and to her surprise, small sparks of light danced between her fingers. It was as if the energy of the place flowed through her, becoming visible in her hands. "Can I control this?" she murmured, amazed. Concentrating, as she had learned in the meditations with Benjamin, Amber visualized the energy taking shape. The sparks obeyed, uniting into a small luminous sphere that floated a few centimeters above her palm. The medallion on her chest now shone intensely, hot against her skin. She understood that it was an amplifier, channeling her natural connection with the Earth's energy and allowing her to manipulate it. For hours, Amber practiced, discovering that she could not only form small lights, but also influence elements around her. A dry leaf rose from the ground and danced in the air following the movement of her fingers. A small whirlwind formed when she rotated her hands in a circle. A drop of dew expanded to form a water sphere the size of a coin, sustained only by her will. When she finally felt exhausted, the sky was already beginning to lighten on the horizon. The first rays of sun touched the circle of stones, and the magical light that had illuminated it during the night began to fade, returning to the natural and apparently common state it would assume during the day. Shadow, who had remained vigilant throughout the improvised training, approached and licked her hand as if approving her progress. It was time to return. The way back seemed shorter. Amber had the impression that the forest was making way for her, branches moving slightly aside, roots avoiding her feet. It wasn't a foolish impression. It was her newly awakened connection with nature manifesting itself in a subtle way. When they reached Benjamin's house, they found the old man sitting on the porch as if waiting for them. By his side, Grandma Rose was serving a cup of steaming tea. "You found the circle of living stones. It wasn't a question." "How do you know?" inquired Amber, sitting heavily in a chair, fatigue finally overtaking her. "The medallion on your chest," pointed Grandma Rose. "It's different, brighter, and your eyes, there's a light in them that wasn't there before." Amber touched the medallion, realizing that indeed the engravings seemed more vivid, as if they had been recently polished. "I saw my parents," she said in a low voice. "I saw what happened in the cave, how they sacrificed themselves." Benjamin solemnly nodded. "The Circle of Living Stones is a place of knowledge and memory. The ancient guardians recorded their experiences in those stones, so that future generations could learn from them. But it wasn't just that." Amber extended her hand, concentrating as she had done in the clearing. A small golden light formed above her palm, dancing like a flame without heat. "I learned to do this." Grandma Rose's eyes filled with tears upon seeing the demonstration. "Your mother did exactly the same thing," she revealed, her voice choked. "In the first days after discovering her gifts, it's the light of the guardians, the visible manifestation of your connection with the Earth's energy." "What else can I do with this?" "Much more than you imagine," replied Benjamin. "But we need to continue your training. Time is short, and Elias is certainly gathering forces for the equinox." The 2 weeks that followed passed in a whirlwind of learning and preparation. Each morning at the Circle of Living Stones, each afternoon studying the ancient texts that Grandma Rose had finally revealed, each night practicing control over her emerging gifts. Everything converged toward the inevitable moment that approached. The spring equinox, when the seal in the Veil Cave would be most vulnerable. Amber absorbed knowledge at a surprising speed, as if part of her had always known, only waiting for the moment to awaken. Her abilities grew daily. Now she could move larger objects with her mind, communicate silently with shadow at considerable distances, and even perceive subtle disturbances in the forest's energy. The medallion, always in contact with her skin, seemed to merge more and more with her being, amplifying her natural capabilities. "She's progressing faster than any other guardian I've ever seen," commented Benjamin to Grandma Rose as they watched Amber practice in a clearing near the house. Not even Elaine developed so rapidly. "It's the blood from both sides of the lineage," replied the old woman, a mixture of pride and concern in her voice. "Elaine's connection with nature and Edward's gift of vision. We've never had a guardian with both inheritances. That's why Elias fears her, and that's why he won't give up easily." Confirmation that Elias was preparing came in the form of increasingly evident signs. Migratory birds returned weeks earlier than expected, fleeing from something that disturbed them to the south. The river level dropped drastically, even after days of rain, and the older residents reported disturbing dreams about the waterfall. That hid the entrance to the Veil Cave. 3 days before the equinox, while training in the Circle of Stones, Amber was seized by a vision so vivid that she fell to her knees. She saw Elias in a different cave, smaller and darker than the Veil Cave, performing a ritual with 5 other men. In the center, there was a crude replica of the medallion she carried, made of a blackened metal. Animal blood flowed over it, feeding symbols that glowed in dull red. "He created a counterpoint to the medallion," explained Amber, upon returning to the house, still trembling from the vision. "He's using blood to corrupt the energy, to gain temporary access to the powers of the Guardians. That would explain the sudden drought and the fleeing animals," pondered Benjamin. "He's draining the Earth's energy to feed his profane artifact." "How? Do we stop him?" asked Amber, her gaze alternating between her grandmother and the old family friend. "We can't wait for the equinox," declared Grandma Rose, her countenance serious. "If he continues draining energy as he's doing, by the time the day arrives, the Veil Cave will already be too weakened. We need to find his hideout and destroy the false medallion." "I can try to locate him," offered Amber. "In the vision, I saw details of the cave. I think I could recognize it." "It's too risky," protested her grandmother. "You're still in training, and Elias has decades of experience." "I'm not afraid, Grandma." Amber held the old woman's hands, her eyes conveying a determination that went beyond her 15 years. "My parents gave their lives to protect this place. If necessary, "No," interrupted Grandma Rose, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Don't talk like that. We'll find another way." The next morning, Amber awoke with Shadow restless at the foot of her bed. The dog growled low, his ears raised in maximum alert. Through the window, she saw that a dense and unnatural fog covered the entire region, a fog that seemed to absorb light, leaving the day as dark as a moonless night. "Grandma!" "Benjamin," she called, running to the living room. "Something is happening." She found them already awake with grave expressions as they consulted one of the ancient texts. "It has begun," said Benjamin, his voice trembling. "Elias is using the false medallion to destabilize the veil between the worlds. The barrier is weakening even before the equinox." "What does that mean?" "It means we have no more time," replied Grandma Rose, closing the book with a dull thud. "We need to go to the Veil Cave right now and strengthen the seal before it's too late." They prepared quickly. Grandma Rose gathered herbs and special preparations in a leather pouch, while Benjamin unearthed a small chest that he kept hidden under the floorboards of his house. Inside were 3 ceremonial daggers with bone handles and blades that seemed to be made of silver and crystal. "These are moon tears," he explained, handing one to Amber, "forged with metal from the stars and crystal from the Veil Cave itself. They are one of the few things that can harm beings from the other side, should the veil have already been breached." The walk to Secret Falls, which concealed the entrance to the cave, was tense and silent. The dark fog thickened with each step, making it difficult to see more than a few meters ahead. Strange sounds echoed in the forest, branches that cracked without wind, whispers in incomprehensible languages, occasional shrill cries that belonged to no known animal. Shadow led the way, his behavior alternating between alert and aggressive. Twice, he diverted the group from trails they would normally follow, as if sensing dangers invisible to human eyes. When they finally reached the waterfall, the sight was desolate. The water flow, normally abundant and crystalline, was now just a dark, viscous trickle. The surrounding rocks displayed a layer of blackened moss, and the air carried a sulfuric odor. "We're late," murmured Benjamin, pointing to recent marks in the mud on the banks of the small lake formed by the waterfall. "Elias has already been here. He's probably in the cave at this moment." Amber felt the medallion burn against her chest, as if responding to the proximity of its corrupted counterpart. Shadow growled continuously now, his eyes beginning to emit that golden glow that announced his transformation into a spirit guardian. "How do we enter?" she asked, studying the waterfall, which, though reduced, still concealed the passage. "The medallion will open the way," replied Grandma Rose. "Place it against the central rock, the one that looks like an eye." Amber approached the rock formation, indicated by her grandmother. There was indeed an oval stone, slightly darker than the others, with mineral veins that resembled an iris. She pressed the medallion against it, immediately feeling a vibration run through the entire structure. With a deep rumble, like a profound sigh coming from the bowels of the earth, the waterfall divided in the middle, revealing a dark passage behind. The air that came from there was cold and ancient, laden with aromas that Amber couldn't identify, something between moss, mineral crystals, and an essence she could only describe as time. "I remember this place," she murmured, taking the first step into the cave. "From my dreams and from the visions in the circle of stones." The interior of the cave was a labyrinth of tunnels that branched in various directions. But Amber, guided by instinct and by memories that weren't entirely her own, knew exactly which path to follow. As they advanced, the walls became smoother, as if they had been polished, and began to display that bluish glow that Amber had seen in her visions. "We're reaching the main chamber," whispered Benjamin, his face illuminated by the soft radiance of the walls. "That's where the portal is." The tunnel suddenly opened into a circular chamber of impressive proportions. The ceiling, so high that it was lost in darkness, was dotted with crystals that reflected the blue light emanating from the walls. In the center rose a simple stone altar, and behind it, a vertical fissure of approximately 6 feet in height, pulsed with pure energy, the portal between worlds, and before it, with his back to the group, stood Elias. "I knew you would come," he said without turning, his voice echoing through the chamber. "In fact, I was counting on it." When he finally turned to face them, Amber noticed that the tall, imposing man she had seen in the grocery store seemed different. His eyes, previously an almost transparent blue, now contained reddish veins that pulsed like living vessels. On his chest, hanging from a chain of dark metal, was the false medallion that Amber had seen in her vision, a grotesque copy of the original, emanating a blood-red aura. "The young guardian," smiled Elias, his eyes fixed on Amber. "We finally meet formally. I see you've brought company. Rose, my old friend, still trying to protect secrets that don't belong to you, and Benjamin, always the faithful shield-bearer. How pathetic." "Step away from the portal, Elias," ordered. Grandma rose, her voice surprisingly firm. "You know you can't open it. It would destroy everything we know." Elias laughed, a metallic sound that reverberated off the cave walls. "Destroy, what a dramatic word. I prefer transform. This world is stagnant, trapped in an artificial balance maintained by guardians, too afraid to explore the true potential of the portal." His eyes turned to Amber. "Your parents understood this in the end, you know. In the last moments, when it was already too late for them, I saw the recognition in their eyes. They realized I was right." "Liar!" shouted Amber, stepping forward. The medallion on her chest shone intensely, responding to her anger. "My parents sacrificed themselves to stop you. They understood what you were never able to accept, that some powers are not meant to be controlled." Shadow placed himself beside Amber, his body growing and subtly changing. His fur acquired a golden glow, and his eyes became like live embers. The spirit guardian was awakening again. Elias observed the transformation with clinical interest. The protector, always faithful to the lineage. "Did you know that I also had one long ago? Before I understood that we should be the masters, not the servants of the natural order." He made a dismissive gesture with his hand. "But enough talk. You arrived too late. The process has already begun." He raised the false medallion, which pulsed with an intense red light. The fissure behind him responded, widening minimally. A cold, unnatural wind emanated from the portal, bringing whispers in forgotten languages. "Stop him, Amber!" shouted Benjamin, drawing his ceremonial dagger. "Use the true medallion." Elias snapped his fingers, and from the shadows of the cave emerged the same three men who had attacked Grandma, Rose's house. They were different now, with empty eyes and mechanical movements like puppets. "Take care of the old ones," ordered Elias. "The girl is mine." The three advanced simultaneously. Shadow intercepted the first, knocking him down with superhuman force. Grandma Rose, with surprising agility for her age, threw a handful of herbal powder in the face of the second, making him back away, coughing and rubbing his eyes. Benjamin faced the third, the ceremonial dagger gleaming in the bluish light of the cave. Amber and Elias stood face to face, separated only by the stone altar. The portal behind him continued to slowly expand, and through the opening, disturbing shadows began to form. "You don't need to follow the same path as your parents, Amber," said Elias, his voice suddenly gentle, almost hypnotic. "Think about what we could accomplish together. With your natural power and my experience, we could rewrite the rules of this world, create something new, something extraordinary." For an instant, Amber felt tempted. The idea of power, of control over forces that few even comprehended, was seductive. But then, the medallion on her chest warmed, as if the memory of her parents was trying to reach her through the ancestral metal. "Never," she replied, her voice finding a firmness she didn't know she possessed. "The power of the portal. So it's not ours to control. We are guardians, not conquerors." Elias's face contorted in fury. He raised his hand, and a wave of dark energy projected itself against Amber, hurling her against the cave wall. The pain of the impact ran through her body, but the medallion shone, absorbing part of the blow. "Fool!" vociferated Elias, approaching with heavy steps. "You are just like your parents, blinded by duty, deaf to the calls of true power." Amber tasted the metallic flavor of blood in her mouth as she stood up. Around her, chaos had installed itself. Shadow fought fiercely against two of Elias's men, his movements fluid and powerful, far beyond the capabilities of an ordinary dog. Grandma Rose had created a barrier of silvery light around herself and Benjamin, keeping the third invader at a distance. The portal continued to expand. Through the opening, Amber could see a world of shadows and distorted lights, colors that didn't exist on Earth and forms that defied human comprehension. Indistinct creatures moved at the edges, attracted by the light of her world. If the portal opened completely— "I don't have time for this," muttered Elias, noticing her concerned gaze at the portal. With a quick gesture, he raised the false medallion and uttered words in an ancient language. The corrupt artifact shone intensely, and a wave of dark energy ran through the cave. The three men who were fighting against Shadow, Grandma Rose, and Benjamin fell motionless, like puppets with cut strings. "A final sacrifice was necessary," explained Elias with indifference, as the vital essences of his own followers were sucked to feed the false medallion. "The final opening requires more power than I can generate alone." The portal pulsed violently, expanding a few more centimeters. It wouldn't be long now. Elias positioned himself before the fissure, arms raised in adoration, and began to intone an ancient and profane chant. Amber looked desperately at her grandmother. Grandma Rose, seeming to understand her silent request, nodded. "The ritual of convergence, Amber," shouted the old woman. "It's our only chance. Concentrate all your energy in the medallion." Elias turned, alarmed upon hearing the old woman's words. "No," he shouted, advancing toward Amber. "You don't know how to perform it. You'll die like your parents." But it was already too late. Amber had removed the medallion from her neck and was holding it with both hands at heart level. She closed her eyes, calling to herself all the energy she had learned to manipulate in the past weeks. She thought of the parents she had never known, but whose sacrifice she now understood. She thought of the grandmother who had raised her, with love and wisdom. She thought of Shadow, her faithful protector. She thought of the forest, the river, the creatures that depended on the balance that was now threatened. When she opened her eyes, she was enveloped in a golden aura that pulsed. In harmony with the medallion, Shadow approached, his flaming eyes fixed on hers, establishing a connection deeper than words. Then Grandma Rose and Benjamin joined, forming a circle around the altar. "You can't perform the ritual without all the elements," shouted Elias, a note of desperation in his voice. "The combined powers of nature and vision are necessary." "The powers of Elaine and Edward," agreed Grandma Rose, her gaze meeting Amber's. "The powers that were transmitted to their daughter." It was as if a door had opened in Amber's mind. Suddenly she understood. She carried both inheritances, her mother's connection with nature and her father's gift of vision. The reason why her training had advanced so quickly, the reason why the medallion had chosen her, the reason why Elias feared her. "You can't do this!" Elias advanced, trying to interrupt the circle, but Shadow interposed himself, his body now practically translucent, more spirit than matter. The false medallion on Elias's chest began to emit black sparks, reacting to the growing energy emanating from the circle. The portal behind him trembled, as if hesitating between expanding or contracting. Amber felt a different presence emerging within her. It wasn't her voice speaking now when she began to recite words in a language she had never studied, but that she understood perfectly. The ancestral memories of the Guardians flowed through the medallion, guiding her in the ritual. The floor of the cave began to tremble. Crystals detached from the ceiling, falling like luminous rain. The energy of the ritual grew, enveloping everyone in a whirlwind of golden light. "Only one thing can permanently seal the portal," whispered Grandma Rose, her voice almost inaudible, amid the tumult of energies. "The voluntary sacrifice of a guardian. That's what your parents did." Amber swallowed hard, understanding what was being asked. She knew that, if she completed the ritual like her parents, she wouldn't return. But if she didn't, everything would be lost. In this moment of doubt, she felt Shadow approach closer. The dog looked directly into her eyes, and Amber realized something she had never considered before. Shadow wasn't just her protector. He was a guardian in his own right, a being that existed at the boundary between worlds, and he was offering an alternative. Through their connection, Amber understood Shadow's plan. The dog, or rather the spirit that inhabited that form, could serve as an anchor between worlds. It wouldn't be a complete sacrifice, but a transformation. Part of Shadow would remain on the other side, maintaining the balance, while part would remain here beside Amber. Elias, realizing what was about to happen, made one last desperate attempt. He launched all the power of the false medallion against the circle, creating a wave of black energy that threatened to engulf everything. It was then that Amber made her decision. She raised the original medallion above her head and, with a quick movement, hurled it against the false medallion on Elias's chest. The two artifacts collided in an explosion of light that blinded everyone for an instant. When Amber's vision cleared, she saw Elias fallen to his knees. Both medallions fused into a single object that burned on his chest like red-hot iron. The man screamed, not from physical pain, but from the agony of feeling all his power being drained. "It can't end like this," he shouted, trying to tear the amalgam of medallions from his chest without success. The power was to be mine. Shadow seized the moment. With a supernatural leap, he launched himself toward the portal, partially crossing it. His physical body remained in the material world, but his spiritual essence extended to the other side, creating a living bridge between the realms. Amber felt the connection with her protector transform. It was no longer just the link between a girl and her dog, but something deeper and more primitive, the union between a guardian and the very spirit of the forest. The portal began to close, its edges gradually contracting around Shadow's extended form. For Elias, realizing he had lost, dragged himself toward the increasingly smaller fissure. "If I can't have the power, I'll take the knowledge," he declared, launching himself in a last act of desperation toward the other side. His body was swallowed by the darkness of the portal an instant before it closed completely, leaving only a thin blue line where the fissure had been. Shadow remained lying before it, his physical body motionless, but his eyes now perpetually golden, as if contemplating both worlds simultaneously. The silence that followed was profound. The chaotic energy that had dominated the cave dissipated, replaced by a serenity that seemed to emanate from the crystalline walls themselves. Amber approached Shadow, kneeling beside him. "You knew from the beginning, didn't you?" she whispered, caressing the animal's fur, which now displayed permanent golden streaks. "That's why you found me, why you guided me to the medallion." Shadow raised his head, gently licking Amber's hand. His eyes communicated more than words could express. Yes, he had always known this moment would come, that this was his mission. Not a sacrifice, but a transformation, an evolution of his role as protector. Grandma Rose approached, leaning on Benjamin. Both seemed exhausted, but their faces exhibited the relief of those who finally put down a burden carried for decades. "It's finished," declared the old woman, observing the blue line where the portal had been. "The seal has been renewed in a way we never imagined possible, and Elias—" "He made his choice," completed Benjamin. "The other side will receive him according to his merits." "And the medallions?" asked Amber, remembering the fusion of the artifacts. In response, Grandma Rose pointed to the floor near the altar. There, where Elias's body had been moments before, lay a single medallion, completely transformed. It was no longer silver, but a metal that seemed to contain all the colors of the rainbow when light fell upon it. The engraved symbols had changed, becoming more fluid, more harmonious. And in the center, where before was the image of a dog, now there was the figure of a dog and a young woman, side by side, united, as guardians. "Your new medallion," said Grandma Rose, a genuine smile illuminating her tired face, forged by the restored balance. Amber collected the artifact, feeling its comforting weight in the palm of her hand. It was no longer just an amplifier of her powers or a symbol of her lineage. It was the physical representation of the new pact established between the worlds, a pact she had helped create. When they finally left the cave, the sun was shining brightly in the sky. The dark fog had completely dissipated, and the waterfall had returned to flowing crystalline and abundant, once again concealing the secret entrance. Animals that had disappeared in the past days returned to the forest, and dry plants began to revive, sprouting with renewed vigor. Pine Ridge was awakening to a new era. An era in which balance would be maintained not by sacrifice, but by communion between worlds. And at the center of this new order were a 15-year-old girl and her faithful companion, no longer an ordinary teenager and her dog, but the new guardian of the forest and the protective spirit that had united the worlds. Amber looked at the horizon, where the mountains of the Elk Range rose majestically against the blue sky. The path ahead would be challenging, filled with responsibilities and discoveries. But for the first time since finding the medallion under the roots of the old mango tree, she didn't fear the future. She had her grandmother, she had Benjamin, she had Shadow, and now she also had the connection with her parents and with all the guardians who came before her. With the new medallion around her neck and Shadow by her side, Amber breathed deeply the clean morning air, feeling the energy of the earth flow freely in her veins. It wasn't the end of a journey, but the beginning of another even more extraordinary one.